back, everyone. You're watching We Heart Therapy, the special series EFT Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Annabelle Bugatti, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified EFT supervisor and therapist here in fabulous Las Vegas. And you might recognize this wonderful lady that we have on screen with us today. This is Dr. Zoya Simakhodskaya. She's one of the many founders and the executive she's the executive director of NICEFT in New York City. And she's a licensed psychologist and an EFT trainer and supervisor therapist. And she's just totally amazing. And we've done a few episodes before, and we're so excited to welcome her back today because we are going to talk about catching bullets. Now, I know, Zoya, this is a phrase that comes up a lot in EFT training, but if somebody's maybe a newbie to EFT or they're just beginning their training and they're like, what on earth is this catching a bullet thing? Can you talk a little bit more about what do we even mean by a bullet? What's a bullet?
Sure. But before I jump into that, I first of all thank you for inviting me again. And I think you're doing amazing work with all these videos that are so accessible and make EFT, spread EFT. So thank you. I know people in Russia and everywhere are watching them and really enjoy them.
Well, that's exciting. Thank you, Russia.
So it's a good question. I think the definition of catching a bullet, it's a reframing intervention. When one, and most originally, it came out of teaching around enactments. I assume people know what enactment is when we ask someone to turn to their partner and share something that might be a little bit more vulnerable, right? We do it in stage 1, we do it in stage 2. And when one partner kind of take a risk, sometimes the second partner gets reactive.
Right.
And sometimes they throw bullets, sometimes they throw grenades, sometimes it's some missiles. Like if we keep going with nuclear weapons, we can go with this metaphor. That feels really terrible to the partner who just shared something vulnerable.
So this would be like they get really reactive and then they kind of turn to their partner. And maybe they like attack them or they jab them, they say something hurtful in return for what was shared.
Right. So for example, let's say our withdrawer takes a bit of a risk and said, yeah, when you criticize me, it feels really bad and I feel like I can't get it right. And I always kind of feel a bit lost and I don't know what to do. And I shut down. And the partner might say, well, this is ridiculous. I've told you, you need to, you just need to do what I told you to do. And you're just weak and you're a loser. So that would be an example, because who defines what is a bullet? It's the person who is on the receiving end of it. And this is a really important question because sometimes something that feels like a grenade to us as a therapist, actually the partner doesn't blink. And they have these interactions all day long and they just ignore it. And yet something else that may seem really tiny, some eye roll or something else, elicit a really intense hurt reaction. I remember one of my very first couple I got certified with, in maybe second session, the husband, who had a pretty still face, it's hard to read, but he was sharing something and I didn't notice anything. The next thing I know, he explodes and runs out of the room. Clearly something happened and I didn't see it. Later on, I understood better that she made a dismissive comment or an eye roll that felt really hurtful. So that's really the definition, is what it feels like to receive it, how it lands.
Yeah, so I love what you're saying is that, these bullets or these little jabs or attacks aren't necessarily always with words. They can be an eye roll or a look or...
That's right.
Yeah, that's just something that kind of sends a danger signal to the other partner and they're like, uh-oh.
Right. And the thing is, which I don't know if it's that's the metaphor we use, but I'm not sure it's a totally perfect metaphor, because this isn't there on our in our offices. This couple, they're not trying to kill each other, right?
Right.
So if they're shooting, it's uh, if they're shooting, um, it means they're in pain, or something, some fear, some distrust came up. So in my view, the bullets or the grenades, they're really an expression of pain or distrust,
Yes,
right?
yes. I love how you make that distinguishment that the clients aren't necessarily meaning to tear into their other partner. They're not like, I'm going to tear into them right now. It's their expression. That reactivity is a signal of pain, that they got a danger signal in some way, that they're feeling a threat by whatever just happened.
Right. And even, there are moments when the partners do something kind of purposely, they're trying to hurt their
Yeah.
partner. But again, it's usually out of their own desperation, out of their pain, or wanting our partner to feel what they feel, the pain they feel.
Right, right. Like, I don't know how else to get you to understand how bad this hurts
Right.
on the inside unless I inflict this hurt on you.
Exactly, exactly. And so when we catch, I mean, first of all, can you really catch a bullet? Nah, not really. I mean, maybe in that movie with Keanu Reeves or something, they might.
Yes.
But we can catch the bullet. Once it flies, it's out. So what we can do, we can try to stop the bleeding, right? We can try to care for the person who was wounded, and then get curious. Get curious and reframe this reactivity and try to understand it. That's the
Yeah.
kind of two major steps that we want to take. First of
Yes.
all, kind of slow things down, right?
Yeah.
And maybe um, acknowledge the partner who was hurt or wounded, that what just happened is painful or difficult. I can understand, if I can understand why this would be upsetting, right? Um, I really believe that it's happening for a good reason, but I don't understand it. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go over here and work with your partner to try to make sense of it. So that was sort of like put a band-aid, stop the bleeding, acknowledge, I see your pain, I'm not, and I'll come back to you. You just took a risk, right? You
Yeah.
shared, you usually don't. And so now I'm going to turn to you and say, hey, something just happened. When she shared how difficult it is or how helpless she feels, something happened for you that made you really upset. So tell me more about that. I'm reframing it.
And it sounds so beautiful and easy when you say it. And I know it doesn't always happen so perfectly in session.
Right.
And I know, we kind of have this thing about making things explicit. So I'm curious if you can maybe share with us how we can kind of call out what we see, make it explicit, like, ouch, that seemed like a little bit of a jab there, a little bit of a poke. How I think with a lot of therapists, their fear is if they call a poke or a
Yeah,
counteract, that's going to set off some other kind of reactivity. And they don't want
right,
to do that, but they do want to say, oh, wow, I just noticed something happened right there.
right.
How do you?
Well, right. So first of all, usually you can use the partner's reaction. You don't have to be necessarily the one saying ouch, because often the partners say, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. Or the partner turns away, right? And you can sort of check in with them if it's not terribly reactive, but you can check in with the partner and ask, so what was that like when he said that or she said that, right? So they will give you the information that it was hurtful or painful. So you can use the partner. I don't love calling that. That's not my. I know other people might. I don't typically say it's a poke or it's a grenade or it's a bullet. I don't like doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think if it's really mean,
Mm-hmm.
if they call the partner names or something clearly hurtful, then I said, can we please slow down? First of all, can we stop? Something just happened and you cursed or you said this to your wife or to your husband, knowing that this will be hurtful. So I name it that way.
Oh,
I
okay.
name the behavior that this thing you did, you know it's going to hurt. And I know you want things to be better and you want you guys to be closer. So for you to do this, there has to be a good reason for it. And I don't quite understand it. So let's slow it down. And there was something, you could start with, what did you hear? You know, what did you actually hear her say? Because sometimes the trigger is invisible.
Yes.
So if they can name it, then we can validate. Oh, now I understand. If you heard that she will never, ever, ever trust you, whoa, that must be that's dangerous. That's kind of hopeless. Tell me more about what that message you're getting, that it's never, things are never gonna get better. That's what you heard. I'm not sure that's what you said, but that's what you heard.
And that's a really good way to put it, because I don't think everybody's comfortable calling it a poke either. And I don't think that works for everybody,
right,
for our clients anyway. So it's good to have a gentle way of you know, talking about the reactivity without it, you know, creating more reactivity, even though sometimes that does happen. You know, some people get really reactive when you see them, even though they want to be seen.
Of course, right. And it's the notion that we're accepting of any reasons or emotions for bad behavior. We do not accept bad behavior.
Right.
But we're always trying to start with accepting that, you know, if this person is doing this right now, there's a good reason for it. So if I can understand it, then I can certainly join them and make it safer and then help them reframe, right? If I can make sense that this was about, I don't trust this new information. So then once we get clear about that, I might ask them to do an enactment back. You know, the reason I got so mad and said this negative thing is because it's so painful for me, or it's so scary for me to trust you or to like give you another chance because I'm afraid I'm going to be hurt and disappointed again. That's a different message.
Yes. This is so pertinent. You know, I had this come up recently in a session where a client was sharing, you know, their pain, that they didn't feel important to their partner, but they were like case building, like, look at how you show your friends all this love and I'm not getting it. And their partner felt like, you're making me wrong for the thing that I did. So the partner, when they were meaning making, just would say, you know, you're totally ridiculous. The way you're making meaning out of that is totally ridiculous. I'm wrong. And I was able to dig out that they had a block to empathy because they were afraid to be vulnerable, because they'd been hurt so much by the other partner that they just kind of closed themselves off, you know, as their way of protecting themselves. And of course they felt bad, but they were like, if I was really honest, this is what's happening for me. And as they shared that, their partner was like, and I was able to empathize with that and say, I recognize I'm a part of that wound. And they were able to have this whole healing conversation, which is spectacular. But it did not start out that way. There were bullets flying. They're like, oh man,
right.
I need some protection here.
Right. And this is, I think, the challenge for us as couples therapists, to see these bullets, grenades, etc., as opportunities.
Yes.
We don't like them. We want people to be nicer. We feel like, yeah, I did this amazing piece of work and look how vulnerable she is and look how much risk she took. Why, can you see it? Can you see it? Please see it. So we try to talk them out of their reactivity.
Right? Yes, it's like, I just set up this golden moment. Are you kidding? It took me forever. Why can't you just accept it?
Exactly. I'm working for you, for your connection. Just cooperate, right? But the more experience you have, the more
Yes.
we learn to lean into them, right?
Yeah.
Because there's something very valuable in that,
Yeah.
in reactivity, especially in stage
Yeah.
one, right?
Yes.
That we're going to learn.
I think what you're saying now is super pertinent, because I think kind of in early EFT, we were really taught to try to plow through reactivity and just hurry up and get to the primary vulnerable emotions. And then a lot of folks struggle with what to do with the reactivity, and reactivity can become a block where you can't move forward into the primary emotion until you organize and make sense of the reactivity. And there's a lot of the therapist issues that also come up around reactivity, where they get triggered by the client's reactivity. Like, oh, am I doing something wrong? I feel very uncomfortable with all of this anger, and now the client's yelling at me, and I feel like I'm failing. So it's being able to help therapists recognize what they're seeing. I think that what's happening in front of them is reactivity, and reactivity means they were triggered. And we can't move past that trigger until we organize it and make sense of it. And that requires us to lean in, which might stretch our own window of tolerance if we're not comfortable with anger, for example.
Right, exactly. I mean, the second piece that I think is also important is our focus. And what we do with some of these bullets really depends on where we are in the treatment in general progress. Are we in stage 1? Are we in stage 2? Are we doing withdrawal re-engagement, or are we doing pursuer softening, right? And where we are in the session in the tango. So, for example, in stage 1, our focus is, the main one is to connect the core attachment emotions and longings and needs to the reactivity, to really make sense of it. That is our main goal. We're not trying to change it. We're not trying to help people be nice to each other. I hear, I want her to be empathic to him. That is not our goal in stage 1.
Or I'm trying to get their partner to understand their moves.
Right. That I'm trying, all I'm doing for each of them to help them make sense of their own emotion process and their own part of the cycle, and begin to get glimmers of their partners.
Right. I love that. So you're really highlighting their attachment intentions, and how maybe that clear vulnerable signal gets blocked by the reactivity. So it's like, when I want my partner to get close and I sense they're not available, I push and I move towards, and I may get hurtful if I feel like this wall is building.
Right. And so if this is what my focus is, then, and I do an enactment of that sort of connection between core emotion and the reactivity, and in that moment the bullet flies, right? My goal is to use that bullet to do the second part of the cycle and to understand the partner's experience, and then put both in the cycle and connect them.
Right. If you're seeing bullets in session, this is probably what's going on at home.
Absolutely.
When
Right. And sometimes they're real bullets, and sometimes it's just reactivity, but we do similar things, right? Versus, let's say I'm in stage 2, right? And they're already de-escalated, and I'm beginning to work with the withdrawer, and our pursuer is not totally soft yet, understandably, right? They have their needs that haven't been met for a long time. So I don't expect them to kind of receive their partner with open arms. So in that moment, if the bullet flies, I'm not going to completely switch. And now my focus is completely on the pursuer and deepening them, etc. My goal is still the withdrawer. So in that situation, I will work a little bit to understand what the trigger was, what the reactivity, what the bullet was, and I'll ask them to do an enactment back that's more about the reason it's hard for me to kind of take in or receive what you're sharing with me. I do want you to share. I do want more of this, because you don't usually share with me. But the reason it's hard for me to hear it is because I get scared, or I'm afraid to hope, right? And so that brings me back to the withdrawer. And now I can go a little bit deeper and do another enactment. And maybe this time there won't be a bullet. There might be more confusion.
I think that's very important that you say that about keeping your focus when these things happen, that it can be very tempting for us. And I think a lot of us have or can lose our balance when we get that reactivity, and then it kind of diverts us away from where we were going onto the rabbit hole. And then all of a sudden we're completely away from that, and we're down this rabbit hole of reactivity onto something totally else, and then it's about them. And sometimes that can result in, like, the other partner has an emotional open bleed now because they just got a bullet, and now we're over here, trying to take the gun away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So knowing what my goal was, remembering that, and so dealing with the bleeding and the bullet and figuring it out, and then getting back to what we were working towards.
So how might it look? So you gave us a little bit of an example of what it would look like in stage 2. What would it look like in stage 1 to maintain that focus even when that comes in?
Right. So in stage 1, what really helps me is the tango, diagram. So if I was assembling emotion with, let's say, the withdrawer in stage 1, right, and we're making sense of her shut down, that she can never get it right, and she doesn't know what to do, and it feels like she's always getting it wrong, and then she shuts down to protect herself, right? Let's say we were able to get some sense of that and did an enactment, and let's say it's a gay couple. Her pursuer wife says, that is so stupid. If only you would tell me things, I wouldn't have to remind, or I wouldn't have to be critical. You're supposed to tell me. It's your problem with your mother. It's your family screwed you up. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I would say to my withdrawer, I know this was not easy, and you don't usually talk about this sense of I can't get it right, and I really appreciate that you did, and probably, I don't know, your wife's reaction is difficult to receive, so I'm going to come back to you, but right now I'm going to go over here. And then I turned to the wife and I said, so something just happened. When she shared her kind of sense of can't get it right, you said it's ridiculous. You sort of, I saw strong feelings. So help me understand that. And then, so it's sort of like I kind of completed my tango move, with one person. So now I'm doing the tango move with her wife, right? So now I'm starting from the beginning. I'm reflecting the process. So something just happened. Help me understand that. So now I'm assembling her experience. And maybe she'll say, when she shuts down, I get nothing, and I don't know what's going on. And I think she doesn't care. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but we'll go. And if she doesn't care, I'm really frustrated and I'm mad. And I think, why can't she just do it? There's nothing, we can't communicate, etc., right? So now we made sense of that, and I'm gonna make the enactment back of sort of this connection. She doesn't care, and sometimes I feel alone, or I don't know what else to do, so I remind you and I poke you and I do this.
Right. So it sounds like
and then I would tie the two things together, right, into the cycle.
It sounds like kind of what you're saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that in stage 1, if we have a bullet, we're going to continue our tango move, but the way we're organizing the bullet is connecting it back to their moves in the cycle and just organizing it, versus stage 2, it's going a lot deeper. You know, when we do get to those bullets, we're processing those in terms of some much deeper meaning, probably view of self, view of other, which we're not necessarily working with in stage one.
Right. And you reminded me there's another piece that's different about stage 2 enactments and bullets. So in stage 2, we might, if it's, you know, I'm sure, you know, George and other people on your when you interviewed them talked about the red light, green light, orange light, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes in stage 2 to the enactment, we might get the yellow light, orange, yellow, whatever color you want. That's a mixed reaction, right?
Yeah.
So then our reframe might be about that there are two parts. One part of you really, you know, appreciates her finally sharing, and really there's the part that's longing to be let in, or longing to be connected in this way, and longs to trust, and then another part that doesn't trust.
Yeah.
We're naming the longing and the fear. And we might sometimes ask the fear to wait, right? We might say, can the fear, well, I'll come back to it, but can it wait right now? And can we lean into this, you know, how important it is for you to hear this? Can you share that with her?
Right.
And if they can, then it's okay. So we wouldn't do that in stage 1.
Right. And for those of you who maybe haven't learned about the traffic light, it's kind of like an attunement meter where you're tuning into how your enactment landed, and a red light is where they completely, like, it did not land on them at all. Yellow light is like a yes, but, like, this was good, but, you know, so you're kind of in the middle, and green is that totally landed on them and you're good, you know. And I think that's another, you know, important part of understanding bullets and stuff, is that I think early EFT, we used to be trained to not set up enactments unless you knew it was going to go well. But I think newer teachings are like, it's totally fine if it doesn't go well, because you're going to bring some of that reactivity alive into the room, which is going to be helpful for you to see and work with. And so therapists don't have to be afraid of your enactment not going well. In fact, expect that as you start to get deeper, more defenses are going to come up. It's going to come alive, and it's important, right? What they're giving you is valuable information.
Right. You know that you've achieved kind of different level in EFT when, as a therapist, you get excited about bullets and reactivity. You're like, ooh, I have something to work with.
Yes. Right. And I don't think many people really appreciate it till they get 2 withdrawers in the room, and it's like pulling teeth out of both of them, and you're like,
I was just thinking that, exactly. Like, get me some reactivity. Let me throw a couple bullets, right?
Right. Yeah. So, you know, I think one of the best parts is just helping therapists to expect, especially in very early stage 1, that you're going to have bullets come up, you're going to have blocks, clients are going to get triggered, they're hearing new information that sounds foreign, they're touching deep emotions that they don't normally touch, they're used to their partner not hearing them or not getting it. So, you know, they're doing things that they probably have said before but not gotten a lot of safety. So of course it's going to come alive, but don't be afraid.
Right. And remember, you know, we are here, right? So we can always respond to that wounded partner with compassion and empathy without sort of shaming their partner, right? So we can always respond and say, I see you. I know this was hard. I know you took a risk, and we're not there yet for your partner to hear you, but we're working towards it. So now I'm going to get curious and find out what just happened. And again, I'm giving a message without shaming that there is a good reason you had this reaction. I may not understand it, like that one of my first patients, I didn't get it until we had a conversation about it.
I love that. And I think Aviva, who's also in New York, calls this the tourniquet bow. You know, sometimes you know, you can't do surgery right then. You just got to tie that tourniquet bow to stop the open bleed. And So this might be helpful too, Zoya, if you can help everyone. What if they throw a bullet right as they're leaving session and you don't have time, or it's the end of session, you just did an enactment, there's an open bleed there. How do you tie that off for the session and have them leave when you don't have the time to fully do that repair?
Right. So I think, first of all, if you're in stage 1, always be conscious of the time and leave at least 5 minutes for wrap up. So don't do enactment 5 minutes before you finish. Do it 10 minutes before, right? So you have a little time. That's one thing I keep in mind. But it still could happen for any of us. So then I say, wow, something big just happened. So you reflect the process. And I really wish we had more time to kind of dive into this. And I know this was hurtful. I guess I wish I had a magic kind of wand to fix it right now, but we can't, and it's okay. I'm going to ask you to maybe leave this with me and try not to have conversations about it that may not be helpful. If I have a sense they won't do well. And then when you come back next week, we're going to start with this, because there must be something really important about this reaction. I don't understand it. We don't have time. But I have trust and faith that this is still about your connection to each other and disconnect that exists, and something got triggered. That's what I would do.
I love that. And I think it's such a beautiful way to let the client know that I see you. I get that this is painful, but I'm not going to leave you out there with this open wound. Like, just to say, we're going to make sure to come right back to this, to the next session. And it does feel very good when you come back the next session. You're like, last time we left off, when this was there, this is what was happening. Let's pick up right there, And they're like, somebody sees me, they're with me.
Or they say, I don't remember what happened, right? It's also possible, right?
Yeah.
Or they had a week to think about it and they actually have some thoughts.
Yeah. And I think a lot of EFT therapists and therapists just in general start to panic if they can't fix it, right? And so there's that urgency.
Right. Well, I often say it's our own hopes and expectations that can be detrimental to our work, because in stage 1, if there's a lot of reactivity, that's not our job to fix it.
Yeah. And sometimes I prepare my clients, like in the intake session, I'll let them know what to expect, and I'll say, there's going to be times where we're going to stir the pot and stuff is going to get hot. It may even explode a little bit. I want you to be prepared. And we're talk about self-care after session, what to do if that happens, So
I love that. I mean, I think you're talking about being transparent about our process, which is so important. I feel like the more I work, the more transparent I've become.
Yeah.
Because it calms me down, it calms them down. So
yeah. And that actually leads me to the last kind of bullet I'd like to talk about. And that's when in these kinds of cases where the client may come back next session and they're like, we're not feeling better. We're still having this at home. Why aren't you giving us the skills or the tools? And they start shooting bullets at you. As the therapist. What do you do in that case?
Yeah, I think it's hard. First of all, I think most of us are going to get triggered because that's normal human reaction. When we get attacked or get told that we're not doing it right, we're going to have some feelings about it, especially therapists. We really want to do a good job, So first of all, you got to calm yourself down, right? You have to find a way to kind of like take a moment. Wow, this is really important what you're saying. Let me think about that. If you're really triggered, take a moment, take a pause. And then I try to remind myself that most of the time they're speaking out of desperation, pain, right? Deprivation. So I'm going to reflect that. I think what you're saying, you really, really want things to get better. And it feels like it's not moving fast enough. And that tells me that there's so much pain that you want to move faster. And maybe you're saying it to me, hoping that I will take it seriously, and I like make even more effort to help you guys. It feels like you said, you know, why don't you giving us skills? You're saying, I want skills, because in these moments when we have a fight, I don't have any tools.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're coming with me, that really is an opening for what it feels like when it's a fight and I don't have any tools.
Yeah.
And in this process, I start doing the tango, and in the process, they might share something, and then I can say, look at that. You right now did something you don't usually do, and she could hear it. There's a tool.
That's the bow tie.
That's the tool.
Yeah. Like, here's the tool you're walking away with.
You just did that, right?
Yeah.
And
it can be hard too with these bullets. Sometimes they're not always around skills. Like, I'll give you an example. And I think it takes a lot of the therapist work to be able to handle these. I think as a young intern, I definitely had a much harder time with client reactivity towards me. And now I've learned to keep my cool. But I actually had this happen just recently where, you know, I had some clients come, they were still very early stage 1, and the critical pursuer, you know, they'd come, it was like 5 minutes before session time, but one partner had to use the restroom. And I said, okay, while you're using the restroom, I'm just going to have a snack real quick because I'm so hungry. I'm going to start eating the wallpaper. Right. And they both said, yes. And the partner ended up taking a little bit long in the restroom. And we were like 5 minutes before we could get started after, you know, the hour. And the partner blamed it on me. She's like, well, you know, doctors could not charge for that extra 5 minutes. They wouldn't get reimbursed. I have really high expectations, so we should be starting on time. I mean, she just like tore me a new one for having a snack. And I was like, oh, like I'm sweating. I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
You know, but I played it cool on the outside, and I was like, well, I really thank you for sharing that with me. And I appreciate that you feel like you can give me that feedback. And I definitely, you know, like I just tried to play it off as cool as I could. And I think that was the best I could do.
Yeah,
but
I think that's wonderful. I think it's always, right. It's always, you know, appreciating what it takes. I don't know if I can tell the doctor I'm mad at them. So to appreciate their directness and that they're asking for what they need.
Right.
And if I have enough alliance, I might get curious about, you know, how it also connects to what they do in a relationship. And if I don't have alliance yet, I would not. I would just sort of take in it. This is building alliance.
Yes. And it was so early that I didn't go deeper into it. But throughout the session, I learned that what the client had just done to me was what they did to their partner a lot. So their partner actually felt very validated. They're like, thank God somebody else sees this.
Exactly.
You know, and it took me a little bit of processing after the session. I was still very triggered on the inside. And, you know, these things will happen. Like sometimes clients, they just go after you because they are in pain.
Right.
And especially if they don't have a view of trustworthiness towards other people, you know, so they may tend to exert that on you because they're not sure that it's safe.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's an opportunity to build the safety and to work on the alliance, that I am taking it seriously. I'm not going to let you abuse me, right? That's also important if it goes beyond sort of that kind of example, but they are hurtful, then you're going to say, actually, that's not okay. I'm willing to hear your pain or what you need, but when you say this and you hurt me in this way, then I don't feel safe in this environment. So how can I help you? So sometimes people also need the boundary that will make them feel like, okay, you're sturdy. You're not going to fall apart. You can stand up for yourself, and that may make them feel safer.
Yes. And I think this is part of where therapists get kind of triggered when bullets come their direction, is they feel like it's something they must be doing wrong. And I've learned most of the time when clients do these bullets, it's just symptomatic of their pain, right? Of their hurt. Right. Like it may come up in very more subtle forms like, well, you don't really have kids. Are you married? You know, where they start getting personal, and they're really saying, do you get me? Can you
Right.
be here with me? You know,
Right.
when they start leaning to you, they're like really asking for safety
Right.
without asking for safety. They're just throwing bullets and getting reactive.
Right. And sometimes we do something wrong. And sometimes we are not attuned. And I've had situations where I got defensive and, in kind of explaining way. And then it was clearly not working. And then I said, it was towards the end of the session, and I said to the client, you know what, I'm going to think about it. I'm not aware of what you're describing, but I am going to think about it. And when I thought about it, I realized, you know what, she was kind of right. So when they came back, I said, this is what I reflected upon. And I think this is what happened. I'm going to do better. And if it happens again, sort of give me a shout. And that really sort of, and it helped me. It helped me see that I was ignoring a very particular kind of thing that was important.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that. Sometimes they may kind of protest us if we're not attuning to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So really, and I love how you played that off so gracefully. Is that I'm going to think about this. You're letting the client know that I care about you, that I'm really going to take this seriously and process it, and we're going to come back together around this.
Well, I'm not always that grateful. I had a client who really pissed me off, and, I got pretty defensive and got reactive, and, and I said, something is going on. I don't know what's happening. She's like, yes, what's happening, Zoe? What's happening for you? And I was like, I don't know. I have to think about it. And it took us a couple sessions to repair. Especially clients with trauma histories, it takes time. So get supervision, get consultation, or just talk to your 911 EFT therapist, make sense of it together. And it's the process of repair. It's the process of trying that really matters.
Yeah, because, when people are in close proximity with each other, they're going to bump into each other.
Yeah.
And therapists aren't immune to that. It's going to happen. We're going to misattune sometimes, and being able to get curious about what's happening and get curious inside, within and between, is so helpful. And even sometimes, like you said, can we slow it down in the session and say, yeah, something's happening, right? I noticed myself, and I think I did that once too. I noticed myself getting kind of defensive right now. So maybe I'm feeling attacked. Can we just kind of pause here and see if we can't make sense of what's going on?
Beautiful. Yeah.
But every once in a while you have those sharpshooters and you're like, ah!
I know. We gotta find our balance. Yeah.
Yes. Relentless empathy for you, the therapist too. This is tough work.
Exactly. First for you, and then we can do for the clients. Yeah.
So thank you, Zoya, so much for this really valuable conversation. This is so helpful. Now, you're in New York City. How can folks find you?
Well, they can visit my website, realcouples.com. I think that's it. realcouplesprogram.com. And also my colleague and I, Michael Moran, and I run Hold Me Tight workshops and Hold Me Tight workshops on intimacy. So that's holdmetightnyc.com. Yeah.
And therapists, if they want to have you come out to their area and do a workshop on sex as a safe adventure or do an externship, they can contact you through your website?
Yeah, or just email me. I'm very good with emails. It's, drzoyasim@gmail.com.
Perfect. And I will make sure that on YouTube, I put all of her websites and email in the description for this video. So it's just an easy click.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And if you guys are in New York, make sure you go to NICEFT. You guys have a lot of wonderful events, right? Is it NICEFT?
NICEFT.org. Yes, we have one coming up at the end of February on interpersonal violence with Jeff and Levin coming from Belgium. I know you had them on your program, so they're coming. We're very excited about that. And Mike and I have Hold Me Tight in a few weeks before Valentine's Day. I think we might have a couple more spots. And then in June, we'll have the Hold Me Tight, Hold Me Just Right on June 1, 2.
Now that's a new thing.
That is a new thing. Yes, Michael and his colleague Nancy Knudsen in New England, they are developing this program with ISEFT, but we're running it to kind of get the kinks out. And it's a wonderful program to specifically focus on the sexual, physical intimacy for the couples who've done Hold Me Tight or been in EFT therapy. We've done it already before, and it's wonderful.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I call you and Mike our sexperts.
Sexperts. Yeah, it's a very important topic, and we're learning more and more. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. You guys do such beautiful work, and folks, make sure that you stop by Zoya's website and that you email her if you've got any questions. If you'd like to have her or her and Mike come out to your EFT community to do a training, just shoot her an email. Most therapists or most trainers are pretty open to traveling, and so Zoya's just absolutely amazing, and her Sex is a Safe Adventure workshop is a do not miss. It's fabulous. So
yes, Mike and I worked on it for a long time, and now we really got it.
Excellent. So guys, make sure that you get in touch with her. Zoya, thank you again so much for being with us. We just so appreciate you.
And thank you, Annabelle, for all you do, for all this effort you make for EFT and for learning. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you so much to our viewers. Without you guys, we wouldn't have a need to keep making more videos. So thank you so much for staying tuned, for subscribing, for emailing me with ideas about future topics. Make sure that you hit subscribe, guys, because more videos are on the way.